Hey guys, it's Mark from XVI here, and welcome to the very first XVI Podcast. This week, the six of us will be discussing gaming, graphics, and a little bit of radiation too. So sit back and enjoy. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course subscribe to the XVI channel so you never miss an upload. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the podcast. So I kind of want to talk about what's going on in the gaming industry at the moment, particularly as we are games developers looking to create our first project. And we're currently operating in an industry where companies are being sued and lambasted basically for trying things a bit different. So a very good example of that is the now legendary Fallout 76. I know that
legendary for all the wrong reasons, I'm afraid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was about to say, we've got people on kind of both sides of the fence here. Personally, I think it was an experiment gone slightly wrong. I think that they are working on fixing it still, as they should. But, I mean, my experiences with the game, they were all really good. I enjoyed it. Never lost connection. Didn't have that much problem with griefers. The only real bugs and glitches I found were no worse than a normal Fallout game.
Speaking from experience, having not played the game...
What experience is this you're speaking from then?
I've installed Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. I haven't played them, but I've installed them.
It's kind of one of my main points, really, is Fallout 3 was a completely different game from Fallouts 1 and 2. And everyone... Like, there are still some people out there that say that Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4 aren't Fallout games because they're not the isometric point-and-click type that Fallouts 1 and 2 were. But there's also people that say that Bethesda revolutionized the genre by creating Fallout 3 in the way they did. So back then, them innovating a genre was considered a good thing, whereas now it's considered a bad thing.
Yeah. I reckon it's too many people that get like butthurt over change.
Yeah, it's that typical thing of the small minority with the loudest voice, isn't it? People just forget as well that it's an experiment. Fallout 76 is an experiment. They never marketed it as the next Fallout title. They always said that it was a little side project and Fallout 5 will be going back to the basics. So, you know...
At the same, sorry to interrupt, but at the same time, they really didn't help themselves on the PR side.
They didn't, which is, again, a learning curve, I would say.
Oh, was that with the satchels or the bags, the messenger bags?
The whole bag incident, and then just the way... Okay, they didn't market the game as a mainline game. They wanted it to be an experiment. But, I don't know, why would you then put a whole cash shop of microtransactions, which work perfectly, by the way. Like, there's never any bugs on the microtransaction store, as opposed to the main game. And... I don't know. It's just bad business, in my opinion.
I mean, the microtransaction side of it, I'd say from a business standpoint, they wanted to make something that would continue making money well after the game's sales have died down. So that makes sense. The fact that it works is also good, because people can't complain about that. And it really comes down to consumer choice, really. Like, no one forced them to go on the store and buy things. If someone's bought the game, downloaded it, gone on the store, bought a load of aesthetic items, applied them to a character without even testing the game to make sure that it works, I'd say that's their fault more than it's the developer's fault. Like the analogy I used to someone recently was, you don't buy a car, put the wrong tyre on it, and then sue the car manufacturer, do you?
So do you reckon like they're more worried about profit rather than in-game experience? Like,
Yes.
I think any business worries about profit more than...
Like, even like in the good, like I keep saying the good old days, we're only 20 odd. But I mean, like, I don't know, back when we were, you know, all still in secondary school or high school, if you're overseas, like it felt like content providers actually, you know, enjoyed and had a passion for what they do, rather than looking at it as for a profit point of view.
Yes and no.
I feel like money's dictated the quality of games that have recently come out.
Yes and no, because back in the day, if you bought a game and you didn't like it, the chances of being able to refund it were little to none. So in the days of Steam now, we have the refund program. We have the ability to trade games. So if you buy it and you don't like it and you're outside the refund window, you can always pass it on to someone else. And there are a lot of indie developers out there that still make games purely for the love of it. Like Dwarf Fortress is a very good example. It's a completely free-to-play game. They make money solely from donations from their fan base.
Yeah, there's a lot of I know it's a touchy subject. A lot of people, will talk, rubbish on a Fortnite and that, but for a free game, it's pretty good.
So Fortnite's a weird one in my opinion because it was never meant for the battle royale to be popular. It was because if you remember, the battle royale's free, and then the actual game, which was like a zombies thing, I've never played it.
Yeah,
that was the main game, and that's what you had to pay for.
Yeah,
so it's really interesting actually that because Fortnite isn't free to play really, like the battle royale mode is, but the game isn't. Like if you want to play Fortnite, then you have to buy the game.
Yeah.
So it's this interesting window where they just happen to have this game mode that's now become genre defining and more popular than
the base
most
game
games.
itself.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
What I like about it, it's got all these, you can buy these or their currency V-Bucks and stuff. You can buy but they don't affect or don't, out.
It's cosmetics.
Yeah, cosmetics. That's it. That's what I was looking for, and that's what I like. It's not in-app game purchasing for like better weapons or anything.
Yeah, it's not pay to win.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of negative stigma about it, but you can literally just hop on it, do a few games, half an hour, whatever, and then leave it. Whereas other games, you have to invest a lot of time. So it depends. I suppose it depends on what sort of gamer you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another thing with Fallout is there's too many people that were trying to make something of the game that it isn't. Like, it literally is a multiplayer, explore the wastes, occasionally launch a nuke at your friend's base kind of thing. It's not supposed to be a heavy narrative-driven game like Fallout 4.
So for someone like me that's sort of, a noob to the Fallout franchise, what is Fallout 76 in a nutshell? Like, a type of game? What type of game is it?
It's like a very basic entry-level MMO.
Okay.
So you can play completely on your own and never meet another player, which is the experience that I had a lot of the time. Before release, a lot of people were worried about the core component of Fallout was always that feeling of isolation. But actually, because Fallout 76 doesn't have companions like the other Fallout games do, I felt more isolated in 76 than I did when I was playing Fallout 4. Because there's no NPCs of any kind that you can really talk to. There's occasionally a robot that you can buy things from, and there's a few enemies that you kill. But there's no companion system, there's no towns and cities where there's a feeling of like Diamond City in Fallout 4, where it's a fully built city with people living there, they have a daily routine. There's nothing like that. It's pure player based.
So what's like the lobby size?
Is it 32? I think maybe more than that.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, like, when I played it, I made sure to like stay away from people personally, because that's how I preferred my approach to the gameplay. And so, like, although there was flaws like, bugs or disconnection from server and that, my time spent on that, I thought it was really worth it. Like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the world. Even though there wasn't a lot to it, I just enjoyed like traveling through and, sort of self role playing. I found that aspect really good. And what I also did enjoy is like the opportunity to actually, randomly see other players. And like every player that I've encountered, if I'm say like, exploring inside this building or this tunnel underground, and like I see another player, they don't shoot you, luckily. Okay. They just do a wave emote at you, you wave back, and then we just continue on with our lives. Like, just
Can I just
like
play
a mutual sign to say like we're both not griefing?
Can I just play devil's advocate here? Because I think there are valid concerns about Fallout 76. Like, so for instance, in like the story behind the game is that you're coming out of Fallout 76 with these survivors and you're going to rebuild the wasteland. At no point in the game is there actually the interaction between different players making bases or anything, because there's no reward to it. Similarly with actual PvP, the reason no one shoots each other because it doesn't matter. If you end up killing someone, then nothing happens. You don't get anything. You get their scrap maybe, but that's not worth it. You don't get any reward.
That is true. Yeah.
My
There are
concern
valid concerns with the
My
game.
concern when I bought the game was I would invest a lot of time building up a base just to log on and watch someone destroy it. And actually what happened was I built my base in a very easy to get to area from the start of the game. And every time I logged in, my base was still there. The only time it ever got attacked was by NPC robots. And I personally like that. I like the fact that someone
You
walks
can
past and
trust
sees
the
my
community.
base and actually says, oh, there's a base there, and then
No
continues
one-
walking.
No one will ever walk past and see your base, because when you log off, your base disappears.
No, I
Yeah,
mean when
yeah.
I'm online. Like when
you're
I'm online and
yeah.
if I'm traveling somewhere, I never get a message saying your base is under attack, and I like that because in Fallout 4, constantly getting that quest notification that Sanctuary Hills is under attack or
Oh, yeah.
Abernathy Farm, whatever it's called, is under attack. I don't want to spend my whole time just going around defending my bases.
Well, Mark, actually, that does happen even more so in 76, because there's workshops that you can claim throughout the map. And constantly, as soon as you leave the area, you would get a notification saying it's under attack. Not by players, but
Yeah.
like AIs.
I did have that at the power
Yeah.
station, and that I don't mind because it's like I don't use that as my actual base. I went there and I claimed it because I found out you can get fusion cores from there. So
Yeah.
if I lose it, that's fine. I'll just go back and reclaim it whenever I need it. But actually having that one base that I can go back to at the end of every play session, put all my stuff in storage and then log off, it's just that kind of satisfaction feeling.
So what do you think is the future for the game? Like, do you reckon it's sort
It
of
can
DLC.
slowly improve, yeah.
A lot of paid DLCs, I guarantee.
do you reckon they will start releasing DLCs, or are they stopping it now? So,
They were planning to.
oh,
Whether they will or not, I don't know.
if they increase the map size with expansions, isn't that? Whether they'll increase the player lobby size.
Ben,
Well, I just did
wasn't
some
you the one who
calculations.
said, the DLC for it in the future will be free?
Originally it wasn't going to be free. Maybe they did make it free. According to the Bethesda sources, it will be free because of the microtransactions in the game, which is a fair play to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like GTA in that aspect then. Like they don't need to make money off DLC, so there's no point charging for it. I just did some quick calculations while you guys were talking then. The map size of Fallout 4 was approximately 87 square kilometers, and the map size in Fallout 76 is approximately 350 square kilometers. The average lobby size is 24 to 32, which means at most there's one player per 10.9 square kilometers. So you do get like the, as I said, the main complaints I read when they announced it would be multiplayer was people saying this won't be Fallout because you just go around in gangs all the time. But I think it's actually had the opposite effect.
Yeah, no one really gangs up. The only time I've seen players like on an entire server cluster together is when they've launched a nuke and they've gone into the nuke-filled zone to get loot, you know.
Yeah.
That's the only time all players in the map come together to one area to fight the AI to get loot.
I think Bethesda did some really clever things with 76, like the random events when you enter certain towns and there's an event going on. I think that's pretty cool because it's so much more fun to do that than it is just to walk into another town that's been absolutely destroyed and there's no one there. Like it brings a bit of character to it. But yeah, it's interesting specifically for us as game developers as well. It's something that we can sort of keep half an eye on and observe as
Like,
it's going out.
I can understand if like you're a fan of a franchise and you've been like, for instance, like I've been playing World of Warcraft since like 2008. If they suddenly said, right, we're dropping the server size to, like 50 people rather than so many hundreds or thousands or whatever it is. And then like that would just be like, oh, cool, right, probably not going to play it again.
But if they did an announcement saying they would reduce the lobby size to 50, but as a result of that, performance would dramatically increase, would you still be annoyed, or would you accept it?
I still like the community side where it's like loads of different players. Like if you had 50 on that size of the map, because the world is huge, and I'm like, it would just ruin the atmosphere for me.
I think people have to look at both sides of it. There'd be a reason why they've made that decision. They're not just doing it for the hell of it.
Yeah. Luckily they haven't, so fingers crossed they don't.
Do you think the people that went to the Diablo Immortal reveal are entitled because they thought it was going to be a new Diablo PC game and instead it was a mobile game?
I think if they have been misled, like if the developers heavily implied that it would be a new PC game and then it turned out to be a mobile game, then fair enough. But it's people jumping to conclusions, really. Like to go on a bit of a segue, in the roller coaster industry, for example, there's a company at the moment called Rocky Mountain Construction that take old roller coasters and refurbish them into new and innovative roller coasters. And there's a rumor going around at the moment about one like that in Florida. Nothing's been confirmed, nothing's been implied, nothing's been insinuated, and yet one person as a laugh said, oh, they're going to do this one next, and now the entire community is expecting it. And that's what I think is happening more and more often these days, is a rumor gets started by someone, normally as a joke, and then other people take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So like that Diablo thing, if they'd implied that it was going to happen and then it didn't, then fine. But I guarantee you that's not what happened. I guarantee you someone made up a rumor and other people fell for it.
Basically, the story was that coming up to the BlizzCon. It's BlizzCon, isn't it?
Yeah.
They said, okay, we've got, for all you Diablo fans, bear in mind the entire fan base of Diablo is PC. So it's like, all you Diablo fans, we've come to BlizzCon. We have this amazing new Diablo game in the works. They didn't say what platform it was, but people assume. So all these people spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars, tickets, hotels, because it's a hardcore fan base. And they get to BlizzCon and it's a mobile game. Everyone's not very happy. Then the PR goes out of the window and the don't you have phones line comes out.
The problem there is
No
they
one was
make
expecting
bad
it.
judgment
Yeah.
on the direction
Very
of their
bad
fan
judgment.
base. They know all of their fans like PC, but they wanted to go for a change, to be a contender with other mobile games. That's why they did it, and they was hoping their fan base would follow them with that idea.
Yeah.
Because they're hardcore, but it turns out no, they just like PC versions of their game.
Again, to play devil's advocate, if your entire market is PC, then you probably should be looking at expanding your market to other areas. And that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. That is the exact same situation that happened with the whole Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC characters. Because everyone was expecting different characters from different games. And when those characters didn't come along, they blamed Sakurai for it and just, banned. They said, oh, this game's horrible, it doesn't have my character.
I see what you're saying, but at the end of the day, they're the ones buying the content.
Exactly.
They should listen to the people that are buying the content. I think with all these things, change has got to happen for people to realise and see where the true loyalty is. So there will be people that will be like, oh wow, I love that it's going to mobile platform. I love that it's a female doctor. And obviously there'll be, the other side that are like, no, it's got to always be a man, or no, it's always that type of game should be on PC.
These kind of things, it's not that people are saying it's always got to be this. It's just that a lot of the time, these companies are conforming to market trends that they believe are there which aren't, and a lot of fans feel betrayed because they've put time, they've put money into supporting products, and they feel betrayed because companies are doing something completely different.
And it's also going to come down to like a waste of time in a sense. Like now you have to wait an extra X amount of years for the next Diablo game to come out on PC, if at all.
But that goes back to my original point. Are you now saying that video game developers aren't allowed to take risks and try new things anymore because the fans will just not buy it and the company will go bankrupt?
I think risks are good, but they should be kept within the confines of what they know their audience already like.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. That developers should know what their audience wants.
Yeah, not what they think they want, what they know they want, right?
See, I see it the other way. I see it as if a company tries something new and their core fan base sort of lose interest, then A, they were never that much of a core fan base to begin with, because you support the developers as well as the products through thick and thin. It's like if your football team loses a match and you decide to go support the rivals. B, the new product can launch a whole new fan base. So really voting with your feet like that, it's all well and good. You can have the whole thing of, yeah, I'm going to make them go bankrupt because I'm going to stop buying their stuff. But someone else will just take your place if it's a good product. And C, you are then saying you have to do it my way or the highway, essentially.
I wonder if all these things are just going to. It's like a time thing. So like how people say back in the day, oh, back in my day, I liked this about things or like that. But it's we're probably like, because technology is going so fast, we are now like maybe the sort of latter second half of the older or like the older generation. We've got all these new kids coming in that love mobile games, that love games like Fortnite, whereas us older kids, we like the old school ways of things. Maybe it's just time has to move on. Like,
speaking as an older kid, being the eldest in the company, when I was born, it was cassette tapes, VHS, cathode ray TVs, no internet, or it was in its very early stages. DVDs barely existed. The things like Netflix didn't exist. I've witnessed the birth of all these bits of technology, and I do know people my age who can't handle it. They can't handle the fact that things are different now to how they used to be. Whereas me personally, I'm always looking to see what's the next innovation. VR coming into gaming now, working with it at uni, I could see the potential, but I could also see that it was in its infancy. But I do read on forums from time to time people going on about how VR is a waste of time and money, and it's not really. Just because it's not being used for what they want it to be used for doesn't mean it's a waste.
And it's in its infancy, isn't it?
Yeah. When I was at school, one day, just randomly on the TV, we started seeing an advert for something called Netflix. And it was, you would go online and you would phone them up and you would tell them what film you wanted and they would send you the DVD in the post.
Yeah,
and it would
I remember that.
It would take 3 days to arrive, you'd watch it, and then you had something like 5 days to post it back or you get charged a late fee.
And I think if you were good and you sent it early, you'd get like free, a free time or free next DVD or something.
Yeah, and that was revolutionary when that started. And now I can just go on my Xbox or go on my PC, and I have access to hundreds of thousands of shows that I would never otherwise knew existed, and it's all there.
See, I'm sort of in the middle. I like the digital, the more the digital side of it, but I still like the physical forms of stuff.
Yeah.
So like, when you used to go back in the day, it's make us sound like Blockbuster. You could go around and look through the films and pick it up, and you have it. Whereas all these digital things, you own it, but it doesn't. To me, it doesn't feel like you own it.
Yeah, it's essentially like cryptocurrency, isn't it?
Yeah, and like with the ultraviolet copies. Like of you'd buy a Blu-ray DVD, you'd get an ultraviolet copy. Now I think it's in America, they're like stopping that service. So that I saw that as a good market. Like you'd buy the physical version, and you'd get a digital copy as well. But
I think when you buy the physical copy, it gives you that sense that it is truly yours. Whereas a digital copy, if you lose it, it's gone.
Yeah. or if the supplier itself like stops the service, you'll no longer have access to the stuff you've purchased. Whereas physical, the only way someone could do it is if you broke the disc or lost it.
Yeah, but it's all Blu-ray now, isn't it? High quality.
No, Blu-ray's gone.
Is it gone? Is it obsolete now?
It's not quite obsolete, but it's died down in popularity because more and more people found that actually it was a time and money sink.
I see. Because that's generally what anime does. Animation companies in Japan make money based off of how many Blu-rays they sell per quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
And when you go on like Amazon or something, generally what is available is just Blu-rays. Because nobody wants to buy a low quality version of what's the point? You can stream it in better quality.
I think what killed Blu-ray was the fact that 4K became a thing.
Yeah.
And then
That's true, but 4K still is not useful without the TV itself.
Yeah.
The 4K.
Yeah. And that's a lot of things. I feel like sometimes great quality isn't always the best thing. Because I think, I'm trying to remember what actor it was. I don't know if it's like Matthew McConaughey or something. It was like he had the same point as me. And it's like, you're watching a cinema. You go to a cinema, you watch a film, and it's got that cinematic feel. Then you buy like the Blu-ray 4K version for your home, and you go and watch it, and it's like in 60 FPS. And it just looks like a live-action sitcom rather than films. And I found out that they actually lower the frame rate, or they have a lower frame rate than most TV programs to give it that fantasy vibe and like cinematic feel.
Yeah. Like a few years ago, I had a girlfriend who her mum and stepdad owned a HD TV, like a really high-powered HD. I think it was the first 4K. When that was a thing. And I was over at their house one night and they were watching Gladiator on DVD. And like the quality of the film was so good, you could see the stitching on the green screen. And it ruined it because suddenly like you could see what was CGI and what was live action, and it just made it it takes you out of the immersion.
Yeah, that always sucks. Like I don't know, it's not a quality thing, but the more you look at older movies, the more you start to see just how far back in time they were. Like, I was watching Jurassic Park the other day, and there was the T-Rex scene when they broke out the enclosure.
Yeah.
And I saw like one particular moment that like my immersion. It was like you saw the T-Rex feet, rain's pouring down on it, but then you look to the left of it and there's no rain. So it's clearly just water running down in that single spot.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in terms of what quality does to older movies now. When you could see the things and how for the time they made it look real because our eyes couldn't pick it up on the screen. But now with technology, the only reason I was able to see that is because I could pause it and rewind. Technology allowed me to see that error.
It's one of my things that I get sort of a lot of entertainment out of is watching YouTubers talk about how they record their games in the highest quality. Like there was one channel I was sub to where the guy, every time he starts a new series, he spends 20 minutes going through his graphic settings, going on about how he's playing it in 4K on his 4K monitor and things like that. And one of his videos was from like 2013, and he was going on about how he was recording it and uploading it in 4K. And I just sort of sat there and thought, YouTube doesn't support 4K. 1080 is the highest, so you're just wasting all of your resources on something that isn't going to be doable, because it's not like it's backdated. If like YouTube support 4K now, but that video will only ever be in 1080 because that's the highest it could go at the time.
Yeah, so you'd have to literally delete it, re-upload it as a modern video.
Yeah.
The other day, me and my dad bought a TV, and it was like a 4K TV. So the guy that was actually presenting it and promoting the TV was like, oh, if you look at this TV, it only shows like 30 frames per second, and it's got like a video of a helicopter like moving, and then the other one's got like 120 frames per second. And on the 30, you could only see like 3 blades, and on 120, you could see like 6 blades. But you realize not all TV shows and channels are 4K.
Yeah.
So they're just showing what the TV's capable of, but there's nothing to support the 4K.
Yeah.
Isn't that also dependent on like animation and the animation? Like the animation, they don't animate it 1,000 frames for just that one scene, do they?
No.
If you saw that frame, it's because an animator decided he's gonna put that frame in. He's not gonna put a frame that it moves literally like a millimeter above or back, that kind of shit. The only reason you should ever have a good PC is for, say, graphics. Graphics could only get better with PCs and higher technology. But in terms of frame rate, that shit doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean the whole graphics thing I don't really buy into either. You know the games I play, OpenTTD and Minecraft, they've got some of the worst graphics in games I've ever seen, but I love the game because it's not about the graphics, it's about the gameplay. There are some games like Breath of the Wild, the first time I left the cave at the start of the game and saw the world, it did take my breath away, but once you start exploring it, you're not then looking around going, I can see every individual leaf on that tree. You're more interested in the enemy that's charging at you from the other side.
It really does depend on the game to game.
Yeah,
definitely. I
definitely.
mean, whenever I play Monster Hunter World on PS4, like, even though the console's got a limited graphic range, sometimes whenever I play Monster Hunter, you look at the monsters, you look at the gameplay, and you're like, shit, for a second there, did that just look like it was real?
Yeah.
Because the game was made by Capcom, and Capcom are actually really good at detail. So they make their games look like it's way better than it will be on a console, any other console that you.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Train Sim is one of those where I see videos of Train Sim and I have to sort of do a double take to work out if it's real or if it's a game. So there are some that graphics does matter, but most of them, like Metal Gear Solid, the first one, really bad graphics, really awesome story, was one of the best-selling games of its platform. No one would care if that game looked crystal clear compared to how it actually looks. And actually, the PlayStation Classic, they didn't remaster it. They re-released it exactly as it was back in the 90s.
Yeah, because it still holds up for its time.
Yeah. I know that you guys were talking about game resolutions last night as well. It's like, as developers, trying to discuss what resolution our games should be at. Whereas, like, when I designed my website for my project last year, I looked at the average size of a monitor and just designed it for that, because that's what most people are going to see, and then just make it so that you can either stretch it or compress it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It comes down to ease of use with the resolution, and in the current projects that's going on at the moment, we're looking to up the resolution that we've been native for essentially for years.
Yeah.
And hoping to update it, and it does make a difference, like, surprisingly. I sent a picture to Kurt, I'm not sure if I sent it to you guys, about the difference between 720 and 1080. It's actually huge. Like, the amount of pixels on the screen, you can fit so much more in terms of detail and in terms of different features and things like that into the resolution screen.
Yeah, I mean, I should point out my argument really is, if it's worth it, do it. But if it gets to the point where you're just trying to ramp the numbers up for the sake of it, like I just did a quick Google search for human eye FPS, and it says the human eye cannot really see any differences above 60 FPS, which is why most games these days are rendered in 60 FPS. Because if it goes above that, it might look great, but you don't really notice compared to 60. So like resolution I think is slightly different because things can get stretched and distorted, but graphics quality in FPS, there's only so far you can go before it becomes pointless.
And I think the higher you go, it almost distracts you from the game that you want or that you bought, because it just feels too realistic to the point where you want that escapism. You want to log in or hop on to a game to just forget whatever's going on in your day, want to chill, relax, whatever, and you want that kind of it's not latency, what would you call it? You want that sort of unrealistic approach or like feel rather than like I don't know.
Surreal.
I'd call that immersion.
Yeah.
You want to be immersed with the game, like, you know, whenever you play a game that's like a cartoon, like Minecraft, you want to be immersed in that because that's the world that is set. It's not realistic. It's cartoony. Same thing with like, if you want to get immersed into that game, you can't have like you can't have like a modern 18 house, you know, or whatever in the middle of the game, and it wouldn't make sense because it's based in like a fantasy world.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this post on Reddit, and it's like graphics sure has come a long way, and it's got a comparison of like, for instance, Mario from it's like the first one to the most recent, and Mortal Kombat, and like Pokemon. And it's just like, damn, it has. And you know these games you buy. Like I bought Crash Bandicoot and Spyro for the nostalgia.
Yeah.
You know, because I loved playing those games like on PlayStation 1 back in the day. But like, I went to play them on the original versions. I'm just like, how did I even see what I was doing in this game? Like, I tried to play Spyro on a PlayStation 1, and I was just like, I just don't know. But I suppose because at that time there was no better, or we didn't know better, it was like the most realistic thing we'd seen.
Oh yeah.
And now that we've got used to these things, there's sort of a boundary that you have to keep up.
It's interesting that you mentioned Crash and Spyro, because I do remember when the Insane Trilogy was released.
Yeah.
The complaint was they obviously put a lot of time and effort into remastering the game visually, and it looked a lot better. Like you say, you go back and play the original games and you think, how did I see this? But they kept the gameplay the same. So one of the complaints was the hitboxes were off, the control scheme was a little bit meshed. So it wasn't... It was a good game, but it wasn't a great game because of that. And I've found playing Spyro, it's the same. Like, the same pitfalls in the original games are still there now, and the graphics are only really what's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I compare it to the analogy of... I'll always compare it to the analogy of cars, because it's all I know from engineering. Like, imagine you bought a car, and it's the most expensive car you've ever bought, and you were told in the garage that it's got 1,000 horsepower. But only after you've bought it do you find out that you can only ever use 100 horsepower at a time. Would you still go around telling everyone what a great car it is and it's got 1,000 horsepower, or would you regret buying it in the first place?
It's just like, well, realistically, you're never going to use that horsepower unless you're on a racetrack that allows you to, because look at the restrictions on the road.
I mean, like, it's not just you won't be able to get it up to its top speed. You're told that afterwards that the engine is capable of 1,000 horsepower, but they've put an electronic limiter on it, which means you can only ever get up to 100.
So there's literally no point in buying. You might as well just buy a car that's got 100 horsepower.
It's kind of like CPU power in that sense, because when they advertise CPU power, like the hertz, gigahertz, whatever, they always give you the maximum, but the maximum is when you clock it out.
Actually, that's another...
what it actually goes up to.
That's another one. That guy that commented on my videos last year telling me to upgrade my CPU, what he didn't know is I could buy an octo-core processor and it wouldn't make any difference because a video game only ever uses one core at any one time. Unless you put something called multi-threading in, which means it can use more than one. But most AAA developers don't use multi-threading because it's too complicated to program into the game's code. So again, you have a processor that's capable of doing 8 different things at once, but you're only ever using one of those cores at any one time. Doesn't that just sound pointless? I just find it baffling. Like, I love the fact that we have this technology and you can do things that you would never have otherwise been able to do. But at the same time, it is like buying the car. There's so much potential, but you're never going to use it, so what's the point?
So that begs the question, what would you do with that powerful technology? What can you do?
The most common answer for that is, like, the reason the World Wide Web exists is for science. So at CERN, back in the 90s, they found out they had more data coming from their experiments that all of the computers at CERN could handle at any one time. So the World Wide Web and the internet was developed so that they could send data to multiple locations around the world and use their processing power as well as their own. And we've jumped on that and started using it for things like Google and YouTube and Amazon and stuff like that. So we're basically piggybacking off scientists. There's always that argument as well as like what does NASA actually do now? Because they don't go to the moon and Mars or anything like that. So what do they actually do that's beneficial to us? But it's because of technology that was developed for the space program. We now have things like carbon fiber casts for people who've broken their limbs, which means they can move around a lot easier. Because of stupid, pointless things like the Large Hadron Collider, we have MRI scanners.
I will just make a slight correction that NASA are going to Mars.
When the shuttle program was cancelled, most people started crying, saying, well, what's the point of NASA now if we're not going to space? And it's like they do other things as well. Even when we were going to the moon, people were asking, what's the point? Like, what do we actually get from this?
Yeah, I think they still like operate many probes around space that like catalog planets and potential other Earths.
I mean, it's like SpaceX. Everyone goes on about Elon Musk is just wasting his money. But because we now have two billionaires who are basically fighting each other for the rights to be the first to land on Mars, we're getting so much better technology from it that we wouldn't otherwise have got. I think it's...
like for instance, scratch-resistant lenses. They were made for space equipment and helmet visors. Now we have scratch-resistant lenses and phones and stuff.
Yeah.
Cameras.
SpaceX have developed reusable rockets, and it's the first time that that's been done on a production scale. And we're doing it at the moment for space rockets, but how long before we can do it for things like jet engines or car engines? How long is it before we get rid of combustion engines altogether and develop ion engines that would work instead?
Yeah.
But there's
And I
always
think
there's
there
always
were,
someone that says it's just a waste of money.
Yeah, and I think there were like other things like nuclear-powered vehicles and stuff. But I think there was, I can't remember where it was, but they actually designed one to replace like the fossil fuels. But the fallout of it, or the way they had to design it, it would like expel radioactive like particles over where it was flying.
That would be a fear of mine if I ever got up. Just think about it. Just pure radiation hitting me in the car.
Yeah.
Did you know
Like,
back
if that
in
came out
the
back of the exhaust.
back in the 50s when uranium and plutonium was still relatively new, they actually put it in toothpaste.
Gee.
Ooh, I better got that plaque off right quick.
Yeah.
It's
Like-
like the stuff in hair dryers, like the mica board stuff that's like a insulation, like type of cardboardy type of thing. They
Yeah.
have that in toothpaste as well.
It's like back in the day they didn't really consider when it came to selling products, like when they put Coke in Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I read about the history of that the other day. It's because John Pemberton had a recipe for wine and I think it was vanilla and cocaine, and he was going to sell it. And just when he was about to start production of it, Prohibition was brought in. So he took the wine out of it and just sold it as cocaine and created Coca-Cola.
Nice.
Damn.
So it was a happy little accident, really, that it became so successful.
Freeze drying. Freeze drying was invented by NASA researchers.
There's a lot of various insulations as well.
Yeah, and
You guys were
for
talking
like
about,
firefighters and that.
I mean, you guys are talking about like uranium and stuff. I mean, like, does that mean that Nuka-Cola could be possible?
Well, yeah, because isn't Nuka-Cola just the Fallout World version of Coca-Cola?
Or radiated Coke, yeah.
Yeah, but radiated Coke.
It's only irradiated because of the bombs dropping, though. It's not irradiated because of its recipe. I think Quantum was the only one that actually had some forms of radiation in its recipe.
Sort of in the ingredients.
Yeah, because it made it glow.
Okay, if I tell you what, you try some and then come back to us in a month.
I'll let
Yeah.
you know, bro. Let you know.
Tell you what, Sakif will report back next week on his findings.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, next week's podcast will be The Life and Times of Sakif Lays.
Well, I think that's been a wonderful discussion, Jack.
Yep, there's just one last thing left to do before we can end. We have to name the podcast, and we have to name this episode.
Oh, can't we do that next week?